with being, with strength we proclaim. Yahuah, Aloha, Qadash is your name. You shall love Yahuah with all your heart, with all your being, every part, with all your strength, let nothing depart. You shall love Yahuah with all your heart. These words shall be written deep in our soul. When we rise up and walk, your Torah is whole. We bind them as signs, they dwell on our gates. Your love is forever, your truth never waits. You shall love Yahuah with all your heart, with all your being, every part, with all your strength, let nothing depart. You shall love Yahuah with all your heart. Teach it to children, speak day and night, write it on doorposts, walk in the light. Hear, oh Yashar, oh Yahuah is one, our esteem, our refuge, our sovereign alone. You shall love Yahuah with all your heart, with all your being, every part, with all your strength, let nothing depart. You shall love Yahuah with all your heart. Yes, you shall love Yahuah with all your heart.
All right, so
Can anybody hear anything?
Yep.
oh, sorry, my mic must have muted automatically. My bad. So no, Shabbat Shalom,
Okay,
everybody.
just checking.
Yeah, no, thank you. But no, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We got a very important presentation today. You know, Sister Marissa has found a lot of amazing information about the calendar, the importance of the North, many other things as well. And we're also going to be covering and going over, you know, the difference, or sorry, I shouldn't say the difference, but maybe it is a difference actually. But the difference between the sons of Zadok who are at Qumran and what, you know, mainstream has labeled them as Essene. They're completely different. So it's going to be a good one today. Praise Yahuah. All praise to the Most High. So yeah, let's so actually before we start, I wanted to just mention this. So this is like a part 2 to the calendar in the North, which is fellowship number 50. And I'll just reply to it here in the chat. But so there's a link I shared earlier. And so for those of you who haven't watched it or seen it or want to review it again, it's a very, very good video, very important information. And this is just a continuation of that. And Shabbat Shalom, Lachlan. Good to see you here, brother. Yeah, we will be
Shabbat Shalom.
So let's just go ahead and get right into it here. So I'll say a prayer, and then we'll we'll dig right into it. Sorry. Father Abba Yahuwah, We come to you in prayer for your blessings and your guidance as we read and we study through your word and learn about the importance of your calendar and your festivals and your Sabbaths. And I wanted to pray for a hedge of protection around this entire fellowship, all of our mishpacha in here. Please put a hedge of protection around all of us and protect us from any attacks from the enemy that may come forth. We know the enemy does not like the truth to be out there, and especially about Yahuah's true Sabbath days, his Moedim. So please just protect us all, guide us, and help us to change our hearts and our minds to have a better heart and a following for you and not our own. And I also wanted to pray for those who are going through trials and tribulations, whether they're sick or struggling, no matter what it may be. Please help to lift us up, help us to overcome all these things. You give us our strength, and you can fight our battles for us. And we truly thank you for all of that, Father. And I pray to you in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, and let it be so.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Jeremy, was there anything else you wanted to say before I get into it?
No, I was just going to ask you to get into it. Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine. Okay. Okay, awesome. So yeah, this is the continuation from our Fellowship 50 that we did a couple of weeks ago. And in that presentation, we talked about first the nature of Yah and how we can see his hand throughout our life and all of his creation, in things as small as a seashell or a fern, and how we can see his continuance, or how he is infinite and never ending. And so we'll also see that interwoven into the luminaries and how his calendar is set up. And then we got into the concept about the north and how on the biblical earth, the north is the center of all things, and that Yahuah himself is also the center of all things. And so when we consider the perspective of how the luminaries move in the north, it starts to create a picture of how we can also see them move where we are on earth as well. And so this presentation, we're going to talk about the solar cycle and the Dead Sea Scrolls, essentially. This first verse is from Wisdom of Solomon. It is he who gave me true knowledge of the forces of nature, what the world is made of, how the elements behave, how the calendar is determined by the movements of the sun, the changing seasons, the constellations, and the cycles of years. So this sentence is pretty loaded here, but the main focus is the movements of the sun. So the sun has different altitudes in it where it will be riding low or it'll be riding high in the sky throughout the year. And then also the angle that it rises and sets at, or comes into view and out of view at. And so the amount of light that the sun is given off is what gives us those changing seasons and helps our crops to grow. And then the constellations as like the backdrop of a clock, if you will, that tells us a lot of important information as well, including the cycles of the years. And so understanding the solar cycle first and foremost is how we're going to get the anchor of Yah's luminary calendar. Second Ezra says, upon the fourth day, you commanded that the sun should shine and the moon give her light, and the stars should be in order. and gave them a charge to do service unto man that was to be made. So man had not been created yet, but they were given a charge to do service unto men on the fourth day. And so when we read Enoch, we learn that the year is 364 days. There are 6 portals that the sun moves throughout the year. And that's what gives us the rhythm of days and seasons, as well as I just want to point out that the number of man is 6. And so it's interesting that the sun's service unto man is whilst it's in these 6 portals throughout the year. Enoch 72 describes how the sun rises and sets through these 6 portals. The length of day and night changes systematically. Early portals correspond to spring, middle portals to summer, later portals to autumn, and the final portals to winter. So, okay, so I have the graph here where I have the month place, the biblical month, and as well as the portals and how many days the sun is in each portal. And so in Enoch 72, he describes the entire sequence of those 364 days. But just for the sake of not reading the entire chapter, I made the graph here. Enoch 2 says, "Observe ye everything that takes place in the heaven, how they do not change their orbits, and the luminaries which are in the heaven, how they all rise and set in order, each in its season, and transgress not against their appointed order. Behold ye the earth, and give heed to the things which take place upon it from first to last, how steadfast they are, how none of the things upon earth change, but all the works of Elohim appear to you. Behold the summer and the winter, how the whole earth is filled with water and clouds, and dew and rain lie upon it." All right. And so when we think about the portals and how the sun moon moves, as I was describing, so above the biblical earth, the sun will move inwards and then also outwards, but simultaneously it moves up vertically and down. And so this was an illustration by 2 sisters of ours. On the right here, we have the one illustrated by Charlie Lloyd, and I love this one because it shows the different angles of the view. And in the last picture, you can see that analemma and how at a certain point in the analemma, the sun has now traversed northward, as opposed to its previous position that was southward in the analemma. And she has the cross right there on the 4th line, but it's that cross is misplaced a bit. I know a lot of people think that when they see the picture of the analemma, that cross in the middle is what is the center point of it, but it's actually not when we compare it to realistic photographs of an analemma. And then the picture on the left is really Adrian's understanding of how the sun moves into each portal. This illustration is made by Natalie, and I love this because if you take notice to the colors, you'll see the seasons. So at the top, you'll see the 10th, 11th, and 12th month is in its own color. So every season has a different quarter of the calendar. And then the part 3, I'll get into these little mansions that she has on the outside. So that'll be exciting too. Okay, so now that we understand Enoch 72 gives us the layout for the 364-day calendar in the 30-30-31, we also have that second witness from the Dead Sea Scrolls here attesting to the calendar layout. And so I just want to read Ezekiel 44 here, talking about the Zadok priesthood. "They shall teach my people the difference between the holy and the common, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. In a dispute, they shall stand as judges, and judge it according to my judgments. They shall keep my laws and my statutes in all my appointed festivals, and hallow my Sabbaths. So the Dead Sea Scrolls contain a calendar that's been preserved by the Zadok priesthood. And these scrolls were discovered at Qumran. And essentially what happened was our priests were kicked out of the temple. And so they went off on their own, and they were keeping Yah's appointed times and festivals the way that he told them to. And so I know that that can be debatable too, like who these people were, where did these Dead Sea Scrolls come from? Are they the Essenes? And so actually Jeremy's going to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, sister. Get me just a sec here. Let me share my screen here. And so this is a little write-up I did about it, and it's really actually very easy to search. You know, it's not any hidden information. It's actually really out there. So, if you just type a search in any search engine you like, and say Gnosticism versus Nicolaitan, sorry, the roots of Gnosticism and Nicolaitan, and you'll see exactly who these Essene people are, and we're going to get into that right now. So, the sons of Zadok are not Essene. They're not associated with them, not at all. So the sons of Zadok, a lineage of priests mentioned in the scriptures, are distinctly different from the Essenes, which is a separate Jewish sect known for their ascetic lifestyle and community practices. While some scholars suggest connections between the two, the sons of Zadok are specifically identified in the context of priestly duties and loyalty to Yahuah, particularly in the prophecies of Ezekiel. And that's what Sister Marissa had just read for us, especially in Ezekiel 44. Very important. So this, the sons of Zadok are also known as Zadokites. And they are a lineage of priests descended from Zadok, who served as the first high priest in Solomon's temple. They are mentioned in the book of Ezekiel, particularly in context of a prophetic vision of a future temple, when they are granted exclusive rights to minister at the altar, and their loyalty to Yahuah during times of national rebellion is emphasized, distinguishing them from other Levite priests. So here's where we're going to get into the difference between the two. So the Essenes were a separate sect active during the Second Temple period, associated with Gnosticism, which is a vegan, esoteric, unbiblical cult. While some scholars have speculated about connections between the Essenes and the sons of Zadok, they are not the same group at all. The Essenes are described in historical texts by Josephus, Philo, and Pliny, but they do not refer to themselves as the sons of Zadok, and had distinct beliefs and practices very different from the sons of Zadok, such as veganism and practices and beliefs that do not line up with scriptures. And in fact, it requires removal of 90% of scriptures to follow this Gnostic nonsense. So most of these beliefs were esoteric in origin and completely differed from what is written in scriptures for us to follow. Those at Qumran are not Essene, they were Zadokites. They were the sons of Zadok. They lived in Bethabara. The Essene lived 30 miles away on a mountain above in En-Gedi, and followed the Nicolaitan doctrine, which was condemned in Paul's letters and in Revelation here. as heresy and sinful. So this is Revelation chapter 2, verses 4 through 7. But I hold this against you, that you have left your first love. So remember from where you have fallen, and repent and do the first works, or else I shall come to you speedily and remove your lampstand from its place, unless you repent. Now this is very important here. We've seen this personally. So, yet this you have, that you hate the works of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Ruach says to the assemblies. To him who overcomes, I shall give to eat from the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of Elohim. So the Nicolaitans were a heretical group in the early ecclesia, whose teachings posed significant dangers to true faith and practice, and they still do. So according to the 2nd century quote-unquote church father, Irenaeus, the Nicolaitans were closely associated with Gnosticism, a heresy that sought to merge quote-unquote Christian doctrine with Greek mythology and philosophical ideas. This syncretism distorted the truth by promoting a false sense of spiritual superiority, asserting that secret knowledge could enable believers to transcend the flesh and its sins. Yeah. At the same time, the teaching condoned or even encouraged immoral behavior, thereby corrupting the true understanding of salvation and just the whole message of what Scripture says. But we see those who fall for this Gnostic doctrine, they are very influenced by immoral behavior. And apologies for my creaky voice, it's just that time of year. So Gnosticism, including the Nicolaitan heresy, undermined and compromised the truth by blending pagan elements with what Scriptures actually says and reads, leading believers away from genuine truth and moral integrity. The Nicolaitans' distorted view rejected the necessity of living a set-apart life and maintaining a scriptural foundation to His Word. The historical example of the Nicolaitans and their Gnostic roots underscores the enduring importance of having a foundation in the truth of His Word. False teachings that distort the truth continue to exist in various forms today, making it imperative for believers to be diligent in protecting their faith and worship from such corruptions. And that's why it's so very important to have a foundation in His Word. Test everything to His Word. Trust and follow no man. And, it's very important to also have that discernment. And just real quick to show you guys how easy it is to search these things out. And let me switch my screen here. So as you can see, it's all over Wikipedia. It's all over the internet. I'll just read this quick. It's an AI generated response, but there, as you can see, there is a whole lot of stuff. Really, really easy to search out. So the Nicolaitans were an early quote-unquote Christian sect mentioned in the book of Revelation, often associated with heretical teachings that promoted immorality and idolatry, similar to some Gnostic beliefs. Gnosticism itself is a diverse religious philosophy that emphasizes secret knowledge and often diverges from traditional Christian teachings, making both groups controversial in early Christianity. But here we see, it's speaking about what they are. So the early Christian sect mentioned in Revelation, and we can see, so it's believed to derive from Nicolaus, one of the first 7, they say, deacons mentioned in Acts 6:5. But the connection between Nicolaus and Nicolaitans is debated among scholars. So the heresy is they were considered heretical and they were linked to Gnostic beliefs. The antinomianism, their teachings included antinomian views, suggesting that moral laws were not binding on believers. This led to practices that were seen as immoral, such as sexual immorality and eating food sacrificed to idols. The Nicolaitans are frequently associated with Gnosticism, a movement that emphasized secret knowledge, which is why it's called Gnosis, and the path to spiritual enlightenment. We can just see by reading all of this the many doors that it opens up to just, for lack of a better word, be ran through by demons. And that's exactly what it is. But we can see, honestly, all you got to do, just type in Nicolaitans and Gnosticism, and you will find all this information and even more. So yeah, we will take it back here to Sister Marissa.
Okay, yeah, so the Essenes, they promoted that kind of doctrine. That's what you're telling us, Jeremy?
Wait, what's that again? Sorry.
I said, the Essenes, they promote that kind of doctrine, right? Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, exactly. So the Nicolaitan doctrine, which is warned about, you
Yeah.
see that connection to it and how dangerous it is.
All right. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So I'm going to go through the layout
I can't
for
hear
the
Marissa if she's talking. Is anyone else having difficulty?
I can hear. Here, I can turn her mic up. Hold on.
Okay, how about now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go through the layout for the calendar that is found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. But first, I want to talk about the Tekufa. So in the Dead Sea Scrolls, we're going to hear the word Tekufa, and it's at the beginning of each season. A lot of times people will mistake that word Tekufa to mean equinox or solstice. But when you actually go looking into those events, they are not 91 days apart. And Enoch is specific about each season being 91 days. And in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they're specific about each season being 91 days. And so that leads us to look into, well, what does the word Tekufa mean? Because it's clearly relevant. Even in the Book of Jubilees, they talk about the seasonal heads and that these correspond with the Noah days. And so Tekufa literally means cycle or circuit. And then I just want to point out too that with the 91-day seasons, all of these are replicable. They are all the same. In that, like, month 1 has the same layout as month 4 once the season changes. And so if there is an anomaly at the end of the fourth season or the 12th month, then it's going to make the pattern not infinite. It will change that pattern. But we know that the nature of Yah is infinite, so they all have to match. And so Miss Natalie put this together for us with the pictographs for the Hebrew and the meanings of each letter in the word Tekufa. Oh, and then also on the left there, you can see that analemma that I was talking about, how if you really put like your hand on one side of it and then your hand on the other, you will notice that the center point in the analemma is not where it's crossing. And I was talking about that earlier, so I wanted to point that out. All right, so here's a translation from the Dead Sea Scrolls for month 1. It says, the beginning of the first month on weekday 4, Tekufa, on the 4th in it, Sabbath. So on the 4th day in it, Sabbath. On the 11th day in it, Sabbath. And then it goes on to talk about the Feast of Passover and unleavened bread. So the first month begins on day 4 of the week, aligning with the Tekufa, the spring turning of the year. So the first day of the year is going to be day 4 of the week, because the sun was set forth on its service to man on that day. And so, let's see, I'm just reading through. So yeah, so it goes on to state each one of the Sabbaths that come into the first month. And then looking at the turn of the season going into month 4, the 28th day of month 3 is a Sabbath. And then there's a 3-day transitional period. So the 29th is the first day of the week. Let's see. It says on the 28th in it, Sabbath. Weekday 2 in it falls the 30th day of the month. That's on line 6. So the 29th will be the first day of the week. Weekday 2 in it, the 30th day falls. It's the second day of the week. And then the 31st is marked as additional. And so that is the intercalary day. Then we got month 6, beginning month 7. I just wanted to show you guys the transitions between the seasons to see how the weekdays fall on the same weekdays at the end of the 3rd month of each season. So it says the same thing here. On the 28th and it's Sabbath, weekday 2, and it falls the 30th day of the month. The beginning of the 7th month is on weekday 4, Tekufa, on the 4th and it Sabbath. So the Tekufa is listed at the beginning, the first day of each season. And then we have the end of month 9, beginning month 10. We can see the 8th in it, Sabbath, so 28th in it, Sabbath, weekday 2, and it falls the 30th day of the month. Weekday 3 is additional. On the first day of the 10th month, Tekufa. Again, these are the Noah days too, so that's relevant. And it's like saying head of the season or beginning of that seasonal cycle. And then we got month 12. And on line 9 on the 28th in it, Sabbath on Vacat. So on the 30th, weekday 2 in it falls the 30th day of the month. Weekday 3 is additional. So that is how the end of the 12th month happens, the same as in line the end of the 6th month and the 9th month and the 3rd month. So what we can really glean from this here is that Tekufa does not always mean equinox and solstice, that it's really marking the head of the season, and that the pattern of Yah's calendar is consistent and replicable. It follows a pattern. So everything that we can learn about the solar cycle, I don't want to say everything, most things that we can learn about the solar cycle is found in the book of Enoch and the book of Jubilees, and uh, a couple of other ones that I read out, that Wisdom of Solomon and Second Esdras, and a lot of really good information in those books, where I know for some people they are very leery of those books. And so when they listen to this kind of calendar teaching, it might turn them off to hear quotes from these books. But these books were actually included in the KJV, but then later taken out. And so Jeremy's going to talk a little bit about these books and, the relevance of them and that they are legitimate.
Absolutely. And let me bring a thing up. I'll do it till you're done, Sharon. So this is actually a section from my write-up that I did. And here, let me share the link here in chat for everybody. And it should take you right to this very chapter here, if you click on the link there. But so this is going to prove out the book of Enoch and the book of Jubilees, and mainly those two are the focus here, because these are the main ones that are foundational for the calendar and to understand it. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Actually, can you put that in the maybe with Natalie's stuff about the calendar too?
Yeah.
Awesome. So
Micah said he's having a hard time hearing you.
Hold on, I'm turned all the way up here. Can you hold on one sec? Can you hear me better now? Yeah, I put my volume at 200%, so okay, awesome. I'll try to speak a bit louder too. Yeah, no problem. All right, so like I was mentioning, this is going to be a section from my write-up, my article I did. I shared the link there in chat, and it's always in the description on my YouTube channel as well, for those who are watching this on YouTube. And I'll just go ahead and read it. It's all very, very important and pertains to exactly this. All right, so there are many who try to discredit the books of First Enoch and Jubilees. Both were removed by Rabbi Akiva in the 1st century. As with the Dead Sea Scrolls, the evidence they present is usually false or untrue interpretations, also adding to or taking away from, or misunderstanding what both books actually say. So mostly what people do is they will just listen to somebody make things up about these books to try to discredit them, and then just parrot what these people say and never actually reading these books. It's quite sad, honestly. But let me continue. So the below selected citations are from 11 different books of the Old and the New Testament that reflect word-for-word parallels to the book of Enoch, showing the familiarity, man, I can't say that word, an endorsement of Enoch's sacred words of prophecy throughout Scripture. And remember, this is only 11 examples out of the hundreds, and made me lose track. Hold on, sorry, apologies, but no, it's only 11 examples out of the hundreds of examples that we see, even doing our Book of Enoch study that we've been doing. It's truly amazing, all the correlations to Scripture, how much Scripture actually, quotes from Enoch. So we have Jude 1, 14 through 15. And Hanok, the seventh from Adam, also Nabu of these, saying, See, Yahuah comes with his myriads of Kodeshim, to execute judgment on all, to punish all who are wicked among them, concerning all their wicked works, which they have committed in a wicked way, and concerning all the harshness which wicked sinners have spoken against him. And this is exactly what Enoch 1, verse 9 says. And see, he comes with 10,000s of his Kodeshim to execute judgment upon all, and to destroy all the wicked, and to convict all flesh of all the works of their wickedness, which they have committed wickedly, and of all the harsh matters which wicked sinners have spoken against him. Then we have Matthew 5, verse 5. Baruch are the meek, because they shall inherit the earth. And this matches actually almost the same chapter 5 in Enoch, but verse 7. But for the elect there should be light and joy and peace, and they shall inherit the earth. So we see Enoch is the one actually who was shown all these things originally. And 2 Peter 2:4. For if Yahuah did not spare the messengers who sinned, but sent them to Gehenna, and delivered them into the chains of darkness to be kept for judgment. So where do we hear that from? Well, it's also found in Revelation 20:10. So, and the devil who led them astray was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet are. And they shall be tortured day and night forever and ever. And both of these together are going to match what Enoch chapter 10, verses 4 through 6 say. And again, Yahuah said to Raphael, Bind Azazel, hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness. Make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, and cast him there, and place him upon rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face, that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire. And then we have 1 Timothy 6, verse 16. Who alone has immortality, dwelling in the unapproachable light, who no one has seen or is able to see, to whom be respect and everlasting might. This matches up with Enoch 14, verses 21 through 22. None of the messengers could enter and look upon his face, because of the magnificence and esteem, and no flesh can look upon him. The flaming fire was round about him, and a great fire stood before him, and none around could draw near him. 10,000 times 10,000 before him, yet he needed no counselor. So this is the verse I usually always mention, because, not even the angels, the messengers, they could not even look upon him because of his esteem. So we have 1 Corinthians 10, verses 19 through 20, 19 and 20, I guess. So what then do I say? That an idol is anything? Or that which is offered to idols is anything? No. But what the Gentiles offer, they offer to the demons and not to Elohim. And I do not want you to become sharers with demons. So this is actually going to be validating Paul and his writings as well, because he's quoting from Enoch 19, verse 1. And Uriel said to me, Here shall stand the messengers who have connected themselves with women, and their spirits, assuming many different forms, are defiling mankind, and shall lead them astray into sacrificing to demons as mighty ones, until the great day of judgment, in which they shall be rightly ruled, until they are all made an end of. And we see even Enoch was shown the great day of judgment. So Luke 9, verse 35, and a voice came out of the cloud saying, "This is my Ben, my son, the beloved, hear him." Enoch 45, verses 3 and 4. On that day my elect one shall sit on the throne of esteem, and shall try their works, and their places of rest shall be innumerable. And their beings shall grow strong with them when they see my elect ones, and those who have called upon my magnificent name. Then I will cause my elect one to dwell among them, and I will transform the Shamayim and make it an eternal barakah and light. And maybe I'll read the connection here in Daniel and then just scroll past the next few because it might take a while to read them all. But we got a lot of information to cover here. So Daniel 7, verses 9 through 10. I was looking unto thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like clean wool. His throne was flames of fire, its wheels burning fire. A stream of fire was flowing and coming forth from his presence, and 1,000,000 served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judge was seated, and the books were opened. This is going to match up to Enoch 47:3. In those days I saw the head of days when he seated himself upon the throne of his esteem. So right there we see Enoch and Daniel called him similar names. And the books of the living were opened before him, and all his hosts, which was in the Shamayim above, and his counselors stood before him. And so this one, we got 1 John 2:15, and it's Enoch 48:7 that it matches with. Acts 10:34 matches up with Enoch 63:8. James 1:6 through 8 matches Enoch 91:4. And this is only a handful of examples out of the thousands of parallels in Enoch to the Bible in scriptures. An online resource of the book of Enoch that shows all the references and parallels to scripture in the entire book of Enoch can be found here. And this is that one we are actually reading from in our Enoch study that shows all the parallels. So this is the most important one. So right here in Matthew 22:29 through 30, and Yahusha answering said to them, "You go astray, not knowing the scriptures, nor the power of Elohim. For in the resurrection they do not marry, nor are they given in marriage, but are as messengers, the angels of Elohim in the Shamayim." Messiah is directly quoting from the book of Enoch. There's no other apocryphal books or anywhere else in scriptures that talks about the angels not being given in marriage. Only the book of Enoch, and it's chapter 15, verses 5 through 7. "Therefore I have given them," speaking about men, "wives, also that they might impregnate them, and bring forth children by them, thus that none might be lacking to them on earth. But you, the angels, were formerly spiritual, living the eternal Chai, the life, and immortal for all generations of the world. Therefore I have not appointed wives for you, for as the spiritual ones of the Shamayim, in the Shamayim is their dwelling." So as Messiah is telling the Pharisees they don't know Scripture and effectively calling the book of Enoch Scripture, that's exactly what's going on there. No other book describes the angels not being given in marriage, only the book of Enoch. Messiah quoting from it is all I need personally to validate Enoch. But just as with the Dead Sea Scrolls, many attempt to discredit First Enoch because he reveals the true solar calendar of Yahuah. And, Enoch 82, 4 through 7, it speaks about all that. It's a very long one, but we're going to go past it here. And also Enoch 75, 1 through 2 speaks about the leaders of the heads of the thousands of stars, which is going to parallel exactly up to Jubilees, which is what we're going to get into. And so we see Jubilees 2, 9 through 10, and Elohim appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth for days, Sabbaths, months, festivals, for years, Sabbaths of years, Jubilees, for all seasons of the years. This is why Jubilees is also foundational to the calendar. We also see it spoken about in Jubilees 6, 23 through 24, these 4 heads of the seasonal months that correlate directly with the 4 intercalary days that Enoch was shown. These 4 heads of months are the days after these 4 intercalary days. And it's because they are the Noah days, the important events that happened during the flood, all happen on these heads of these 4 seasonal months. And then Noah himself ordained them as festivals. And so, let me scroll down a bit. So it's going to bring us to the book of Jubilees. Not only does Jubilees parallel Enoch, it also parallels the Tanakh, the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible, and specifically Genesis and Leviticus and some of Exodus. It also gives understanding and supports the calendar in the book of Enoch. And as with everything else above, many try to discredit it with lies and false information because it reveals Yahuah's true calendar. So the rabbis after the 1st century after Messiah had mixed opinions regarding what are now known as apocryphal books, such as Enoch and Jubilees. And you can add 2 Esdras, Baruch, so many others to that list. But though some maintain that these books were holy or set apart, Kodesh, the others claim that the reading of these books was enough to condemn one as a heretic. The books of Jubilees and Enoch may have been especially suppressed, as they espoused the solar-based calendar, the true calendar, in contrast to the dominant view supported by the Pharisees, according to which the months are lunar-based, or Babylonian. So one of the most prominent was Rabbi Akiva, who lived between the 1st and 2nd century and became, according to the rabbis, the greatest of all the sages in the Torah. Yeah. He participated in composing the Mishnah and the Halakha, which is a Jewish code of law, and has many mentions in the Talmud and other rabbinic writings, and was also a Kabbalist. Rabbi Akiva had the authority and power to order the removal of older biblical manuscripts and institute the use of new ones. And he could deem Hebrew texts in the temple court to be unfit for public reading. So basically, this guy took it upon himself to deem, his own authority on what books can and cannot be read. And a lot of what's known as apocryphal books now are all on the list of the books he has removed, including Enoch and Jubilees. So, rabbinic sources indicate that the rabbis also had the authority to dispose of entire biblical books if they deemed them unfit or inferior. And in fact, they did so on numerous occasions. Further, they also controlled the copying and dissemination of the Hebrew Masoretic text, which they created. Yep, this is exactly where this Masoretic text came from, where a lot of the King James and a lot of our modern Bible translations are translated from. So even prior to the destruction of the temple, there was already evidence of centralized control by the Jerusalem temple authorities, the usurpers, or the Hasmoneans, over Hebrew biblical manuscripts circulating in Israel. The Masoretic was composed by Pharisee scribes who worked in the temple court and used master copies stored in the temple archives to quote-unquote correct or edit out and reword scrolls brought to Jerusalem by local leaders. This is recorded in rabbinic literature and is also evidenced by the scrolls found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, or Qumran. When the temple was destroyed and other sects disappeared, such as the Sons of Zadok, the rabbis emerged with full control over the Proto-Masoretic text and the doctrines and writings of Rabbinic Judaism. These writings became absolutely authoritative for these Palestinians and those who followed Judaism by the rabbis. And this is exactly where we get the Synagogue of Hasatan. That really, that's what it is. Modern day Synagogue of Hasatan. So Akiba and other influential rabbis traveled and successfully exerted their authority, their own authority. In time, the rabbinic influence worldview became central to Judaic belief and practice all across the earth, stemming modern Judaism. And in the mid-2nd century, the Seder Olam became the quote-unquote official Jewish chronology. So Rabbi Yosei ben Hafta, its primary author or editor, was a disciple of Akiba, and they claim the Seder Olam supersedes the authority of the Hebrew text. And this is according to rabbis. And this is a quote from this guy, Rabbi, what's his name? But this is him, a direct quote from him. Our traditional chronology is based on the Seder Olam because of the authority of its author. You know, giving himself all the credit. And again, all the sources to all of this is going to be at the bottom of my article here. So if you want to check out those sources, feel free. But it's rabbinic authority and not the authority of sacred texts that is paramount. The rabbinic Seder Olam was successfully dispersed into the communities as the authoritative chronology of world history. And that's exactly what they still do today, rewrite history. And is followed by some even today. While the Mishnah insists that the calendrical disagreements ought not, under any circumstances, tear the rabbinic community apart, even if that entails suppressing challenging opinions, or, look at this, ignoring astronomical facts in order to maintain calendrical unity. So they are willing to unite in the lies. That's exactly what they do. So thus removing many texts like Enoch, Jubilees, and many more. Qumran and Jerusalem were permanently separated by calendrical matters, the usurpation, and many more things. And this just goes into the Council of Jamnia, if you would like to research more into that. And let me scroll up so you can see. So it's Jamnia, Council of Jamnia. And this just goes into more detail on, you know, why the modern Christian churches and Bibles and things like that, they reject the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees. And I know we've gone over this quite a few times before, so let me get to the Book of Jubilees section. So the Book of Jubilees, also sometimes called Lesser Genesis or Leptogenesis, or the Book of Division of Time, is an ancient Hebrew work of 50 chapters. And in my opinion, and others as well, it was written by Moses. Many scholars believe that as well. So considered canonical by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church as well as Beta Israel, or the Ethiopian Jews, where it is known as the Book of Division. and was included in many early canons of the Bible. And until the discovery of extensive fragments among the Dead Sea Scrolls, the only surviving manuscripts of Jubilees were 4 complete Ge'ez texts dating to the 15th and 16th centuries, and several quotations by quote-unquote church fathers such as Epiphanes, Justin Martyr, Origen, as well as Diodorus from Tarsus, Isidore of Alexandria, Isidore of Seville, Eutychius of Alexandria, John Malalas, George Sinclaeus, and George Kendros. There is also a preserved fragment of a Latin translation of the Greek that contains about a quarter of the whole work. So there's already two witnesses in we have right there, and then the Dead Sea Scrolls is the third witness. So the Ethiopic texts, which now numbering 27, are the primary basis for translations into English. Passages in the text of Jubilees that are directly parallel to verses in Genesis do not directly reproduce either of the 2 surviving manuscript traditions. So dating from about 2,300 years ago, it contains material that is specifically in the book of Genesis, Leviticus, and the first half of Exodus. Why? Because after that, Moses had passed. So Moses can't write when he's not here. And in addition, a striking feature of Jubilees is it divides history into a period of 49 years, or hence the title Jubilees, which in a biblical context refers to the end of a 49-year period, and provides dates for biblical events, specific dates really. These following verses validate the book of Jubilees as scripture and inspired, and also shows it lines up with everything Enoch explains about the calendar. So the Jubilees chapter 6, verses 30 through 38, it's going to confirm everything about the 364-day count. And all the days of the command shall be 52 weeks of days, and these shall make the entire year complete. And that's 364. Thus it is engraved and ordained on the tablets of the Shamayim. And there's no neglecting this command for a single year or from year to year. So what we're reading here, every single year is 364 days. There's no neglecting that at all. It's a command from Yahuah. And you shall command the children of Israel that they observe the years according to this reckoning, 364 days. And these shall constitute a complete year, and they shall not disturb its time from its days and from its festivals. For all shall fall out in them according to their witness, and they shall not leave out any day or disturb any festivals. But if they neglect and do not observe them according to his command, then they shall disturb all their seasons, and their years shall be dislodged from this order, and they shall neglect their laws. And all the children of Israel shall forget, and shall not find the path of the years, and they shall forget the heads of the months, the 4 days of remembrance, the Noah days, and the seasons and the Sabbaths. They shall go astray as to all the order of the years. And it continues to go on to say that, but what we see is it's a command every single year to have 364 days only. There's no adding 7 days in there, none of that. And we start the count from 0. We got to remember that. So here we're going to get into the correlations with Jubilees and Scriptures. So Jubilees 16:26. And he Baruch his creator, who had created him in his generation. For he had created him according to his good pleasure. For he knew and perceived that from him would arise the branch of righteousness for the everlasting generations, and from him a Kodesh seed, so that it should become like him who had made all matters, So we know who the branch of righteousness is, speaking about Messiah. We see this in John 8:56. Your father Abraham was glad that he should see my day, and he saw it and rejoiced. Also in Galatians 3:16, but the promises were spoken to Abraham and to his seed. And does he not say, and to seeds, as of many, but as of one, and to your seed, who is Mashiach? So here in Jubilees 16, it proves out how Yahuah spoke to Abraham about the coming of Messiah, the branch of righteousness. And from his seed, he was glad, and he blessed him. And this is confirmed in John 8 and Galatians 3. So Jubilees 1:27 through 29. And he said to the messenger, the angel of the presence. So this is very important here. So he's telling a messenger, an angel, to write these things. Write for Moshe from the beginning of creation until my mikdash has been built among them forever. And Yahuah shall appear in the eyes of all, and shall know that I am the Elohim of Israel, and the father of the children of Jacob, and the sovereign on Mount Zion forever. Boom, there it is, Mount Zion. And Zion and Jerusalem shall be Kodesh. We see the difference between Mount Zion and New Jerusalem. A lot of people like to make claims that they're the same thing. They're really not. So, and the messenger, the angel of the presence, who went before the camp of Israel, took the tablets of the division of the years, from the time of creation of the law, and the witness of the Sabbath, of the Jubilees, according to the individual years, according to all the number of the Jubilees, from the day of creation, when the Shamayim and the earth shall be renewed, and all their creation according to the powers of the Shamayim, and according to all the creation of the earth, until the mikdash of Yahuah shall be made in Jerusalem, on Mount Zion. And all the lights will be renewed for healing, and for peace, and for a barakah, for all the chosen of Israel, and so it shall be from that day into all the days of the earth. And there we go. Again, we see, New Jerusalem, it's going to be sitting on Mount Zion. Very important stuff. So Acts 7:53. Who received the Torah as it was ordained by messengers, the angels, but did not watch over it. So Paul, we see, knew that the Torah was ordained and written by messengers, the angels. And then Galatians 3:19, why then the Torah? It was added because of transgressions, until the seed should come to whom the promise was made. And it was ordained through messengers, the angels, in the hand of a mediator. So here we see in Jubilees 1, the messenger of the presence, or the angel, was asked to write for Moses the division of the years and the law of Yahuah. This is not found in the Old Testament, but is found in Paul's writings, who knew Torah very well. And I believe it was probably edited out of our modern translations in the first place, but we see it right there in Jubilees. And then here's a big one that a lot of people, they try to use it to discredit Jubilees. So Jubilees 50, verses 7 through 9 specifically, really the whole chapter of 50 is really good, but we're going to go over verses 7 through 9. So 6 days you shall labor, but on the 7th day is the Sabbath of Yahuah, your Elohim. In it you shall do no manner of work, you and your sons, and your male servants, and your female servants, and all your cattle, and the sojourner also who is with you. And the man that does any work on it shall die. Whoever profanes that day, whoever lies with his wife, or whoever says, he shall do whatever on it. So this is a big one with some people, because they're like, oh, well, where's the command to say that? Oh, we're going to show you. So, or whoever says he shall do whatever on it, that he shall depart on a journey therein. So this is, pay close attention here, because it's speaking about departing on a journey in regard to buying or selling. It's not saying just a journey or a travel is sin. But we'll get into that a little bit as well. And whoever draws water thereon, which he had not prepared for himself on the 6th day, and whoever takes up any burden to carry it out of his tent or out of his household shall die. You shall do no work whatever on the Sabbath day, except what you have prepared for yourself on the 6th day, so as to eat and drink and rest. So this is a very important thing right here. So do no work except cooking. You are absolutely able to cook on the Sabbath. It says it right here in Jubilees. And I know the reference people like to use is, oh, bake what you bake, and so forth and so on. But that whole entire chapter in Numbers is in reference to the manna bread. If you didn't bake or cook the manna bread, as soon as you gathered it, it would grow rotten and grow worms. So context is really key. But anyway, that's another subject for another time. We'll probably get into that actually sometime, just to go over it. And again, it's okay to agree to disagree. But anyways, let me continue here. So, to guard the Sabbath from all work on that day, and to Baruch Yahuah your Elohim, who has given you a day of festival, and a Kodesh day, and day of the Kodesh rain for all Yisrael, is this day among their days forever. So the whole do not lie with your partner there in Jubilees, we're going to see exactly where that comes from. And it's right here in Leviticus 15, verses 16 through 18. And when a man has an emission of semen, then he shall wash all his flesh in the water, and be unclean until evening. And any garment and any leather on which there is semen shall also be washed with water, and be unclean until evening. And when a woman lies with a man, and there is an emission of semen, they both shall bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. So not only does the man become unclean, but so does the woman. And you don't want to be outside of the camp for being unclean on a Sabbath day. Very important. Let me continue here. I'm almost finished. So give me just a little bit here, and we're almost finished with this. So Numbers 5, 1 through 3 is actually going to talk about, being outside the camp when you're unclean. So, and Yahuah spoke to Moshe, saying, command the children of Israel to send out of the camp every leper and everyone who has a discharge, everyone who becomes defiled for a being. Send them both, male and female. Send them outside the camp, so that they do not dwell and defile their camps, in the midst of which I dwell. So yeah, we see that discharge, and we just read if you have a discharge of, the stuff, you are unclean. So then you are therefore supposed to be outside the camp. Yes, it did, Sister Sumi. And then we have Jeremiah 17:22. So this is going to be a very interesting one, because we're not going to see this written in the quote-unquote 5 books of Torah by Rabbi Akiva, but they are found in Jubilees. So Jeremiah 17:22, you must not carry a load out of your houses or do any work on the Sabbath day, which is what we just read above there in Jubilees 50. But you must keep the Sabbath day holy, Kodesh, just as I commanded your forefathers. So what is Jeremiah quoting from? Literally Jubilees 50. Well, here, let me finish reading here. Oh yeah. Yep, exactly, Bobby. That is very true. Sue me. I don't know if that would be the case, you know. But here, let me continue. So many try to claim these verses in Jubilees 50 are quote unquote adding to the Torah, and this can't be farther from the truth. As we can clearly see in Leviticus and Numbers, to be unclean, and the details why, are supporting evidence on why we shouldn't be with our partners in that way on a Sabbath day. We cannot be unclean on a set-apart day, or we have to be outside the camp. In verse 8, we see not to carry a burden from your house on a Sabbath day. So, Jubilees 58. This is not found in the Torah at all, but is found only in the book of the prophet Jeremiah 17, solidifying even more the validity. And then in verse 9, it goes into more detail about the cooking and all of that. So the Sabbath is a festival day to Yahuah, and fasting is only permissible when you're doing a 7-day or longer fast for Yahuah. And actually, I need to change that up because we discovered something about that. And actually, I still have that video from Brother Jimmy speaking about that. Very interesting. I'll have to find that and we'll talk about that. But travel on the Sabbath should be considered carefully, and long journeys should be discouraged to prevent violation of Sabbath laws, which emphasize on rest and gathering. And this doesn't mean to say you can't, go and drive to go and fellowship in person somewhere. I don't believe that that's what it's speaking about, because we see Messiah was walking through the fields on the Sabbath days to go fellowship. And resting can also help to maintain the focus on Yahuah during his set-apart day. And the meaning of travel on the Sabbath intertwines with the themes of rest, reflection, and community. It prompts individuals to consider how their choices on this day may affect their spiritual well-being. And a long journey can be tiresome and a lot of work, and doesn't allow for a gathering. But however, there are exceptions, especially in the cases of necessity to worship or to do good works. So for example, those attending an assembly often travel short distances, and that's perfectly fine. We should demonstrate a balance between honoring the Shabbat and fulfilling our obligations to Yahuah by not going on a long journey and resting. And again, whatever you feel convicted on, that's between you and Yahuah. So as we can see, Enoch parallels Jubilees, and Jubilees parallels Enoch, and both of them combine parallel to scriptures and are inspired works. They are the base of the calendar of the Zadok priests found in the Qumran community and the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were removed by secular authority because they didn't fit with their observance of the moon, and were and are still highly discredited for the same reason. This is why they give them that title, Essene. They want to relate the sons of Zadok to just some crazy vegans out in the desert practicing witchcraft. No, those are the ones up over there in Ein Gedi, actually called Essenes. But anyways, let me continue. So those with eyes to see and ears to hear and willing to study the truth will understand this. And let me stop sharing here, and you are free to come back in whenever you're ready there, Sister Marissa.
All right. Let's see. Hold on.
Hey, Jeremy, before we jump
Yeah,
into this, Kayleen has a question that what would be carrying a burden on this Shabbat?
yeah. No, I was actually just replying to that. So,
Oh, sorry.
no, it's okay.
Maybe carrying water, or wood or something like that. They would have gone to the well. So what's happened is they haven't prepared themselves for the Sabbath. So they've kind of been a bit lazy. So they sneak off to the well to carry water back to their house when they should have done it the day before, sort of thing.
Yeah, that or doing
So
any.
they would maybe carrying something to sell, perhaps.
Yeah, that as well. I would agree for sure. Anything that's burdensome, or you know, possibly moving heavy furniture, or what have you. I I should probably go and look into that more on what carrying a burden is, and defined
I
by scripture.
think that that actually also pertains to your worries and your any kind of irritation for you know what I mean. No arguments. No, I mean the burden of anything that keeps you from Him. Would that
Really good
also?
point, Tim. Yeah, I never considered that. Yeah, really good point.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, thank you.
Can you remember a couple of meetings back? I'd gone out for a walk on the Sabbath, and I started to feel a bit sweaty, and then I mentioned that or remembered scripture about how the high priest wasn't even shouldn't even perspire really. So when it comes to physically carrying a burden on the Sabbath, I think that it shouldn't make you sweat personally on a physical level, but I like what you said, Tim, about the burden, worries, and concerns. Yeah, we shouldn't bring them into the Sabbath either, should we? Or any troubles that we've had with our children or wives or family or neighbours or whatever. Yeah, it's good. I like that.
Yeah, definitely agree. Definitely a good point there, brother. All right. So, whenever you're ready there, Sister Marissa.
Okay. All right. I'm going to share the screen. Now, I know that you read a couple of this Jubilees one. All right. So going back to, so now we know that Enoch and Jubilees are legit. And so we can read this and like understand like, wow, this is really how it actually is. So Jubilees 2 says, and on the fourth day, he created the sun, moon, and stars and set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon all the earth and to rule over the day and the night and divide them the light from the darkness. And Yahuah appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth for days and for Sabbaths and for months and for feasts and for years and for Sabbaths of years and for jubilees and for all seasons of the years. And so this is why it is so important to understand the sun's role in Yah's calendar, because the sun is the leader, essentially. I'd just like to read this opening part of Enoch. The book of the courses of the luminaries of the heaven, the relations of each, according to their classes, their dominion, and their seasons, according to their names and places of origin, and according to their months, which Uriel, the holy angel who was with me, who is their guide, showed me. And he showed me all their laws exactly as they are, and how it is with regard to all the years of the world and unto eternity, till the new creation is accomplished, which dureth till eternity. And this is the first law of the luminaries. The luminary, the sun, has its rising in the eastern portals of the heaven, and its setting in the western portals of the heaven. And I saw 6 portals in which the sun rises, and 6 portals in which the sun sets, and the moon rises and sets in these portals. When I just wanted to explain, like, when we read that, we see 6 portals. Oftentimes we think about the menorah, but there are 7 branches on the menorah. So the only place we can see 6 is between the branches. So those are the portals, as represented in the menorah. And where was I? And the leaders of the stars and those whom they lead, 6 in the east and 6 in the west, and all following each other in accurately corresponding order. Also, many windows to the right and left of these portals. And first, there goes forth the great luminary named the sun, and his circumference is like the circumference of the heaven, and he is quite filled with illuminating and heating fire. The chariot on which he ascends, the wind drives, and the sun goes down from the heaven and returns through the north in order to reach the east, and is so guided that he comes to the appropriate portal and shines in the face of the heaven. So Enoch's describing the 6 gates in that, but specifically it describes the very first day of the calendar in that verse 5. So the sun goes down from heaven, returns through the north in order to reach the east. Or I've heard other versions say returns, traverses northward in order to reach the east. And so that's very like cryptic in a way if you dissect that sentence into, well, what does each part of the sentence mean? But this verse 5 is the starting point of the sun's yearly cycle. And we can know this when we read in Psalms 19. I'll just read the whole thing. The heavens are proclaiming the esteem of El, and the expanse is declaring the work of his hand. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech and there are no words. Their voice is not heard. So these are the luminaries. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he set up a tabernacle for the sun, and it is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. It rejoices like the strong man to run the path, or the race. Its rising is from one end of the heavens, and its circuit to the other, and naught is hidden from its heat. The Torah of Yahuah is perfect, bringing back the being. The witness of Yahuah is trustworthy, making wise the simple. The ordinances of Yahuah are straight, rejoicing the heart. The command of Yahuah is clear, enlightening the eyes. And so the most important sentence here, I feel, is this, and it is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. So that means the sun was set forth on day 4 in his service unto man, and is like the strong man running the path, beginning on that 4th day of the week. He's now come out of the chamber to run the path. So he starts his race on day 4 of the week. But what precedes that, what comes before that, is the sun being in the chamber day. And so I think that is what really connects Enoch 72:5 when it talks about the sun traverses northward in order to return to the east. And so northward being symbolic of that center of the earth, or the center of the firmament, or the throne of Yah. So we're trying to discover here, what day of the year is Enoch 72:5 speaking of? And so some other scriptures to consider, when we think about this chamber day, well, how can we know what the chamber day is? Or how can we know what is that great sign that the sun shows us? So we have a few scriptures here. The first being, consider the work of Yahuah, for who can make straight what he has made crooked? And that makes me think directly about the sun's circuit, is that on the equinox day, we observe a straight line shadow, and then the next day is the curve. Then that next day is the beginning of the sun's service unto man as he's come forth out of the chamber being the day of the straight line, because the chamber is, in fact, Yahuah himself, who sets everything forward from him and everything returns to him. Psalm 5:8 says, lead me, Yahuah, in thy righteousness because of mine enemies. Make thy way straight before my face. And one of my favorites, Mark 1:3, the voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the master, make his path straight. Matthew 7:14, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. And so that verse is also very relevant when talking about the land in the north. John 15:5, I am the vine, you are the branches. The one who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing. When we think about the way that the menorah is described being made, that center branch is what is created first, and then the six come off of it. So he is the vine, and then we are the branches that stem out from him. And it makes sense when we think of the luminaries being a service unto man, and the number of man being 6. So what is the chamber? Enoch 71 says, and he showed me all the secrets of the ends of the heaven, and all the chambers of the stars, and all the luminaries, whence they proceed before the face of the holy ones. And he translated my spirit into the heaven of heavens, and I saw there, as it were, a structure built of crystals, and between those crystals tongues of living fire. And my spirit saw the girdle which girt that house of fire, and on its 4 sides were streams full of living fire, and they girt that house. So what's the house of fire, guys? And round about were seraphim, cherubic, and ophanim, and these are they who do not sleep and guard the throne of his glory. And I saw angels who could not be counted, 1,000 thousands, and 10,000 times 10,000, encircling that house. And Michael and Raphael and Gabriel and Phanuel and the holy angels who are above the heavens go in and out of that house. And they came forth from that house. So they're going in and out of the throne, essentially. And they came forth from that house, and Michael and Gabriel, Raphael and Phanuel, and many holy angels without number. And with them the head of days, his head white and pure as wool, and his raiment indescribable. And I fell on my face, and my whole body became relaxed, and my spirit was transfigured. And I cried with a loud voice, with the spirit of power, and blessed and glorified and extolled. And these blessings which went forth out of my mouth were well-pleasing before that head of days. And that head of days came with Michael and Gabriel, Raphael and Phanuel, thousands and 10,000s of angels without number. There's so much written in there that you could really dissect this whole thing. But what I find it interesting is that if we're talking about a chamber day in which the sun comes out of, and then the 4 seasons of the year, I just picked up on this, that last sentence, and the head of days came with these 4 angels. So I'm looking at that like, wow, like that he is the throne, he is in the midst, he is the center, and everything comes forth from him. And there's a lot of language in Enoch too, when it's talking about the stars, it sounds like an army. Also, oh yeah, and that was the other thing I picked up on was about the Lord of Hosts. We hear Yah being referred to that, the Lord of Hosts, but then we also hear the hosts of heaven when it's talking about the luminaries. So I know Jeremy read this earlier, and I'm like, come on, you're jumping ahead of me. But
It's review.
it's a review. We're reviewing this. Daniel 7, 9 through 10. I was looking until thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like clean wool. His throne was flames of fire, its wheels burning fire. A stream of fire was flowing and coming forth from his presence, and 1,000,000 served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judge was seated, and the books were opened. And I love this depiction too, because now, in considering Yah being what everything comes forth from and returns to, we can see he saying, I'm looking until thrones were placed and the Ancient of Days was seated. So he comes in first. He is that chamber day that's being described in Psalm 19. Enoch 47:3, in those days I saw the head of days when he seated himself upon the throne of his esteem. And the books of the living were opened before him, and all his hosts, which is in the Shamayim above, and his counselors stood before him. So the throne is what was created first. That is Yah's dwelling place. It is the inner chamber. It is the sanctuary. It is the oracle. It is the center of all things, from which his word proceeds out from. So we must remember at the bottom, Yah's set apart place of his throne, and the soles of his feet is in the north/northward. And we see that in Ezekiel 8 and 43. The head of days is the OTOT, or the sign himself. So those Hebrew letters there are the letters for sign. And we went over that in the previous presentation, breaking down each of those letters and what they mean. But in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they even talk about this OTOT sign, or OT, however you want to say it. This is the great sign. And it occurs on the day of the straight line shadow and is set apart from the curve of time, just as he is. Before all things and by him all matters are established. This is the day spoken of in Enoch 72:5, that the sun moves northward and simultaneously returns to the east, preceding the 1 through 364 day count, the 4 seasons of 91 days that begin in verse 6. So Yah is the head of days himself. He is the great sign, and the sun makes that straight line shadow where he is the Aleph and the Tav. So he is the beginning and the end of all things. So this straight line is like, yes, the previous year has now been filed and the next year is to begin. He is that 365/0 day. Okay, John 8. Yahusha answered, if I esteem myself, my esteem is none at all. It is my Father who esteems me, of whom you say that he is your Elohim. And you have not known him, but I know him. And if I say I do not know him, I shall be like you, a liar. But I do know him, and I guard his word. Your father Abraham was glad that he should see my day, and he saw it and did rejoice. Just some food for thought on that, what my day means there. And just like anything else in scripture, there's multiple layers of meaning. Okay, in Ezra 6, then did I consider these things, and they all were made through me alone, and through none other. By me also they shall be ended, and by none other. And this visual here is when I went through like explaining in one of our previous fellowships. So I basically overlaid the analemma with the menorah and showed how north is upward and south is downward. And I put that little mountain in the middle for Mount Zion. All right. I thought to include this slide again, as I did in the previous one, so that you guys can see essentially how the OTOT sign works in the calendar. So we can see on the left with that first gold emblem that there's Yah and his throne and him at the beginning of all things. And in the darkness, he said, let there be light. So his throne, his dwelling place was already there above the face of the earth, the face of the deep. And so he is that preeminence. And everything else comes forth from him. And so you can see that number 1 as the first day of creation, number 2, number 3. So we got days 1 through 3. And then on day 4, he sets forth the sun as the bridegroom coming from the chamber on its path of its service unto men. And so the 364-day count starts there and loops all the way around. That black is the first year and loops all the way around. And we get to day 3 of the week, day 364 of the year. And the following day is the great sign, is the chamber day, is the head of days, is Yah himself. All the luminaries have now returned to him at the end of the year, and then they proceed forth from him to start the year the day after. And so then we got the second year in blue, and then the third year in green. And at the bottom of this picture here, I have the breakdown of the Hebrew letters for that word sign. We have the Aleph, meaning first or beginning, and we have the Tav, meaning last and ending. But what's in the middle is the Vav. So the Vav means to hook or to bind together, to connect or fasten. So we can see right here how Yahuah is the Vav himself in between the end of the old year and the beginning of the new. So this is the sign, is that straight line. And that is the day that is between the last day of gate 3 and the first day of gate 4. And so when we look at that menorah, we can't visualize it any other way than those spaces in between are the portals, and that center branch, that straight line, the vine that the branches protrude out from, is Yahuah himself. So I have Jubilees 1:9 in the bottom. And Yahuah appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth for days and for Sabbaths, for months and for feasts and years, and Sabbaths of years, and for Jubilees and for all seasons of the years. So the sun's path at the North Pole is very telling for us. The North Pole, as we know it, the sun behaves very differently from what we experience at lower latitudes. Or, you know, we're like, I don't want to say like on the outskirts, but we're, you know, on the outside of the north when we think about that biblical earth model and the north being in the center. So in the north, the sun moves along a circular path along the horizon. And so say you were sitting on a spinning chair and you were staring at the sun, you could spin all the way around 360 degrees and watch the sun the entire way. So it moves along the horizon. There's no up and down. It goes around at the north, rather than rising in the east and setting in the west. So for 6 months, though, the sun remains entirely below the horizon. So people will not see it in the North Pole. They would, depending on the month of the year, essentially see like a shining coming, kind of like, you know, we experience before the sun rises, but the sun will not rise. They will just see its light. And then for the following 6 months, the sun will stay completely above the horizon. At first glance, this seems impossible since the horizon meets our eyes at a seemingly level plane, even when viewed from the altitude of an airplane. Yet at the north, Mount Zion stretches to the heavens and towers far above the sun's path. From this esteemed vantage point, the extraordinary movements of the sun can be seen, revealing the exact day that the sun has moved northward in its cycle. And so it's, I read that and I can hear that question being begged. Yeah, but, we're not in the north and we're not going to see that. I know. But that is the significance of Enoch 72:5. The sun has traversed northward in order to return to the east. We're going to see that sign of the sun returning to the east at 90 degrees east. And that day it sets 270 degrees west and makes that straight line shadow. That is the sign for us that we can see. But because we have programs like Stellarium, we can visualize the sun's path returning northward in the analemma when it finally comes above the horizon. And that day that it is completely above the horizon happens simultaneously on the day that we will see the straight line shadow. Psalm 125, they that trust in Yahuah shall be as Mount Zion, which cannot be removed, but abides forever. As the mountains are round about Yerushalayim, so Yahuah is round about his people from henceforth, even forever. Yahuah's set apart place in the north, positioned in the midst of Yasharal, is a location where the passing away of days, seasons, and years can be observed in a unique way. The chamber day, which follows after the 364th day of the year, is when the sun has traversed to the north in order to reach the east. So I have the solar analemma on the right there. And I've had quite a few pictures of the analemma throughout the presentation, and the angle of it depends on where you are on Earth. Just like when you're looking up at the night sky, Polaris may look further away in the distance for some, but it might look more overhead for others. So on the 364th day of the solar year in the north, the sun reaches a precise position half above and half below the horizon, which is the 0 degree line. So we'll look at the first picture here. I'm on year of 2024. That 0 degree line is right in the center, and the sun is completely below it on March 17th. And again, this is the view of the sun from the north. And so if, like, you were on Stellarium in these screenshots, if I moved the minute up, the sun will traverse along the horizon and stay below that 0 degree line on March 17th here. But we can see in 2024, on March 18th, on day 364 of the year, the sun is half up, half below the horizon, which it probably does not mean this in Enoch where it says the sun is 9 parts on day 364. But I did find that an interesting coincidences, and are there ever any coincidences? Probably not. So then we have on 2024, the great sign. This is the equinox day. The sun has now traversed northward in its analemma, in its entire circuit. It's above the 0 degree line there. It's on that line in the east. And this is the day that that straight line shadow will be seen. So that is the great sign day, meaning the next day, it would be the day 1 of 364, would be the day after this. The equinox day marks the fleetness of the old year and the establishment of the new year. On this day, many on the earth will observe the straight line shadow, a great sign to Yasharel. In this way, the sun returns to the east. and the following day begins its next circuit along the curve of time at the renewal of the solar year. And so I thought about this a lot, like, well, where does the 24-hour circuit of the sun begin? Like, where is the actual solar day? Is there a way that we can figure out what the starting point is on the circle of the earth that the sun's above, circling around? And so I looked into that some more. Just want to read a few of these scriptures. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no change, nor shadow of turning. That's like, ooh, like gut punch. With whom there is no change, nor shadow of turning. So shadow of turning, I'm thinking of that, the curved shadow on day one of the year. But Yahuah himself, on his day, there is no shadow of turning. It's straight. Deuteronomy 11:12, a land which Yahuah your Elohim looks after. The eyes of Yahuah your Elohim are always on it, from the beginning of the year to the latter end of the year. The sun makes one full circuit across the sky every 24 hours, creating a single solar day. However, the Gregorian date at any moment depends on where a person is located along that circuit. Understanding this makes it entirely possible for Yah's people to worship him on the Sabbaths and feasts, united at the same moment within the same solar day. And so we all know that the Gregorian calendar is the facade. It's overlaid, and it is what has taken the focal point, if you will, for the division of time. But we are called to come out of her, my people, and try to understand Yahuwah's division of time. And so where the world has placed these Gregorian dates are incorrect to what the actual 24-hour solar day is. And because they're incorrect, what it does is it disallows all of us to worship Yah on the same Sabbath day and feast days. It's meant to divide us from that. How incredibly profound would it be if everybody across the earth were celebrating Yah's Sabbath day together? Of course they would want to hide that. And so I looked at all of the time zones across the earth and the equinox day per these time zones. So the day of the straight line shadow. And so we have on the right side of the map here, all of these locations will observe the straight line shadow on March 20th of 2026. And thus making 3/21 day one of the new year. However, on the left side of the map, all of these places will observe the straight line shadow on March 21st.
Hold on. Let me get the bottom so you're listening to this.
Somebody has to mute.
Sumi, mute.
Oh, am I on?
Oh, are you?
Yes,
Sorry.
you are.
If we're,
No worries.
yep, we're on there.
So on the left side of the map, these people will observe that straight line shadow on March 21st of 2026. When it is March 21st for these people on the left, it will be March 20th for us on the right. And I say us because I'm on the right. But we have people in this fellowship that come from all over the world, and that's the significance in figuring this out Like, when is the 24-hour solar day? And we know that there is one day that the sun's going to make that straight line. And so thus, we can see that change in date. Both of these are happening simultaneously, but this is how it happens, is that so day one of the new year for us, being March 21st, is going to occur at the same time as March 22nd will occur for the people on the left. And so, before I read this, don't look at it. So Jermaine asked a really interesting question last night where she said, how many daylight hours will we share together on the Sabbath? So for an example, because she was on the left side of that map and where most of us are on the right side of that map. And so today's fellowship started at 1 o'clock Central Time where I am, but for her, it began at 5:30, her 5 o'clock her time, sorry. And so her and I are 8 hours apart. So her day was just starting. I was in the middle of my day, and I believe Ken was towards the end of his day, but we are all seeing the same daylight hours at the same time. We're experiencing this one moment together, this Sabbath day together, and able to commune and come together and worship Yah collectively, regardless of my calendar says whatever today is, the 7th of December, and hers might say the 8th. It doesn't matter. It's the same moment in time. And we're able to know that by seeing when that straight line shadow occurs for each of us. And so the answer to her question was because we're in the winter now, it gets dark around 4:30. So that's only 3 hours of daylight for us here that we're going to share with Jermaine at the beginning of her day, essentially. And so the amount of daylight hours that we share is going to shift throughout the year, but it's the winter now, so these are the shortest days of the year for us. And so everybody has asked about the leap year, and we are able to visualize the leap year by looking at what the sun is doing in the north as well. And so it's important to always begin the year on the day after the great sign and to number our days from there. We can see when the true leap year occurs in the north because there will be a second day that the sun is on the horizon line or the 0 degree line. These years will not align with the leap years on the Gregorian calendar. And so I'll explain that last sentence in a second. But if we look at the image on the left, we see day 364 of our current yearly count. So it's showing March 18th of 2026 is day 364, the third day of the week. And then the leap year occurs the next day. So we will not see the straight line shadow on the 19th of March in 2026 because it's the leap year. And thus, the day after, on March 20th, we will observe the great sign, that straight line shadow. And this, again, is for those of us who were on the right side of that map. And for those who were on the left side of the map, you would want to add a date to the Gregorian calendar here. So essentially, 321 will be the great sign over in Australia. And so it's important to note that these years will not align with the leap years on the Gregorian calendar. And that's why when you have seen the cycle of years chart, it looks like 2 years start on the 20th and 2 years start on the 21st. But it's only because the Gregorian leap year is not aligned with the solar leap years. And so I have that here Again, these are all the dates for those of us on the right side of that map. And so the leap years are in the green. And so we can see that for 2026. I have some outdated terms here. The leap year is in the column in the green, and then the column to the right of that is the great sign day. And so if we look at day 1 to Kufa, the fourth column from the right, you'll see that for 2 years, we're starting our year on March 20th, and then for 2 years, we're starting it on March 21st. But again, this is because the Gregorian leap year does not align with the solar leap year. So the dates do not appear as like 3 years are one and 1 year is the other. It's only because of that extra day that they add to the Gregorian calendar. So it misaligns it like that. But understand that these Gregorian dates, they are the facade. And so we have to look past that and not get hung up on those numbers, because Yah's calendar is determined by the luminaries. Enoch 5:2 says, and all his works go on thus from year to year, forever. So he is infinite. And all the tasks which they accomplished for him and their tasks change not. But according as Elohim hath ordained, so it is done. Yahuah is the general of the army, and he sets forth the hosts of heaven from his chamber. They're waiting on his cue, just as the priests wait on the high priest. They're waiting on his cue. And so this picture was created by Natalie. It is not filled in for the Gregorian dates. It is just showing the layout of the calendar, but in understanding that the great sign will be the day of the spring equinox or the straight line shadow. And I know that she has some made up with the dates for those of us on the right side of the map and the dates for those of us on the left side of the map. And I'm sure she'd be happy to share those. And I believe that is the end of the presentation. Thank you, guys.